young girl on her back as they climbed the long mountain path. She told the girl that since it was her first time here, she would show her around so she could get used to the place. Donoli promised to explain the sect rules and everything the girl needed to pay attention to. The little disciple smiled and said she was ready to listen. But when Donoli started listing the sect rules, it was just a bunch of nonsense. The little girl was completely lost. Donoli then quickly brushed it off, saying those were all the rules, and it was time for the important points. She explained that their sect was small, with only 10 members now that the girl had joined. She added that there were 6 other disciples under a different master, and that the sect chief was her brother, who was 6 years older. Her tone suddenly got serious. She warned the girl to never be alone with her brother or learn from him. The warning conjured a terrifying image in the little girl's mind, and she stammered, asking if the sect chief ate kids. Donoli shook her head, explaining that it wasn't that simple. She said he didn't eat kids, but the truth was something much worse. With a grave expression, she told the girl that her brother was sick. This led to a memory of her brother. He was always saying strange things, claiming that their world was just a game, and he was a player. Back then, she just thought he was always talking nonsense, wondering if he was out of his mind. She remembered him crying, claiming their parents had treated him badly for 40 years. She had to remind him he was only 19. He then said that after their parents passed away, he started seeing some kind of power, which just confused her even more. She sighed, convinced something was wrong with her brother's head. She felt like it was up to her to work hard and make the sect strong. Also, nobody would ever dare to bully him. Just then, they saw a figure in the distance. The little disciple pointed and asked if that was the sect chief. And there he was, her brother, standing on a cliff under the full moon, striking a ridiculous pose. Dongli was completely mortified. He was saying some grand, poetic nonsense about how the world would never shine without him. It was exactly the kind of thing she'd been warning the girl about. Dongli panicked. She quickly tried to cover the little girl's eyes and ears, desperately telling her not to listen to his words, but it was too late. The new disciple was completely starstruck. She thought he was incredibly handsome and couldn't believe this was the legendary sect chief. Dongli remembered him telling her once that he had mastered the art of being completely and utterly shameless. He was proud of it. She had to get the new disciple out of there before she was brainwashed. Dongli quickly told her brother the girl was tired and needed to rest, then hurried away. But the little girl just kept looking back, completely in awe of the sect chief. As his sister hurried away, Lu Chaog stood alone on the cliff. He finished his grand pose, letting the wind spell he'd summoned fade away. He pulled up a screen to check the new girl's information. He was impressed, wondering how his sister found someone with a chance of 9. It made him think about his own journey. It had already been 21 years since he first came to this place. This place, the Heavenly Mystery World, was actually the biggest virtual game of his time. Some even said it was a real parallel world, and that the players were just holograms. In all the years he'd been here, he hadn't been given any special advantages. But he knew, based on his calculations, that was about to change. The game's alpha test was coming soon. Right on cue, a system notification appeared. The alpha test was starting, and a new function had been unlocked. A slow grin spread across his face. Everything was going exactly as he'd planned. The system asked if he wanted to check his profile. Of course he did. His profile popped up. He was level 10 with full health. His bone and charm skills were already maxed out, but his luck was permanently fixed at a weirdly specific number. He was a little annoyed by some of the descriptions, but he was glad the system at least recognized how handsome he was. He figured that even if he was weak for a bit, being handsome was forever. Then another message appeared. The alpha test would begin in 30 Earth days. In this world, that meant he had 300 days until the first player started showing up. He thought back to Earth, a place he really didn't like. He smirked, thinking about how his name was Lu Chaoge. Now, he was handsome, rich, and could have any girl he wanted. He remembered his past life. He loved games, but he wasn't very good at them. His only real advantage was that he had a ton of money. He was the kind of player who would just spend whatever it took to win. He remembered asking his parents for dinner in their huge, empty house. The place was always silent. His parents were rich, but they were never home. He felt like an orphan. They sent him money, but never picked up the phone. He had no idea where they were. After living like that for so long, he just stopped caring about anything at all. He thought about how strange it was. In his old life, he had everything he could ever want, but he felt like he had nothing at all. He just spent all his time in a digital world, completely cut off from everyone. But then he woke up here, reborn as a baby. His new parents looked down at him, and his father tried to think of the perfect name. His mother looked out at the morning sky and called him Zhaoge, which means singing in the morning. Lu Zhaoge. He couldn't believe it. He'd been reborn and given everything he had ever dreamed of in his past life. Back in the present, a new task finally appeared on his screen. This was it. He had been preparing for years for this moment. He thought only an idiot would refuse. He reached out and claimed the task. The system immediately began scanning his identity. A moment later, it confirmed his identity as the chief of the Mohist sect. He had claimed the main mission, to expand the sect and make it the mightiest in the world. He thought about his father's lifelong wish to expand the sect. Now, it was his mission too, and he was more than happy to do it. He reached out to check the mission details. The system responded with a huge, flashy display as it began its evaluation of the Mohist sect. He had to admit, the effects were pretty cool. The evaluation finished. The result came back. Mohist sect, low end. It was the lowest possible rank. He couldn't believe it. He knew the weakest sects in the world were 9th rank, and the strongest, like the sword sect, were 1st rank. To be called low end was just humiliating. He wondered if the system was broken. How could his sect be ranked lower than 9th? A new screen popped up, showing the requirements to reach the next rank. The first one, having 10 members, was already fulfilled. The system basically told him there was no bug. He was just clueless. He actually smirked, realizing it was his own fault for never leaving the mountain. He remembered that the Mohist sect used to be a branch of the powerful sword sect that actually made him feel great. Having a connection to the sword sect, even a past one, was a huge advantage. Elsewhere, an elder from the sect was leaving an offering at a tomb. He mentioned that besides the 10 known members, there was still one more who was away. A strange purple energy floated out from the stone. The elder spoke to it, saying he was glad they were still around. He explained that the person inside was brought back by the 31st chief. They were incredibly powerful and fought a huge battle 100 years ago, but now they just lived in this tomb. He thought about the pros and cons. On one hand, they already had a tomb prepared for when this person finally died. On the other hand, he wasn't even sure if they were still alive. Back at the sect, the Mohist chief was having a meeting with Elder Lu in a huge, empty hall. It was a management meeting for the sect. The chief looked serious and told Elder Lu that he had decided to leave the mountain. Elder Lu just smirked and teased him, asking if he was dating some drama queen. That got him angry, and he reached over to pinch her cheek, telling her to shut up. He pulled his hand back, acting completely heartbroken. He demanded to know why she thought he wanted to go outside to brainstorm instead of just staying put and cultivating. He slammed his hand on the table, finally getting serious. He told her he needed to make a breakthrough, and they didn't have any money. They'd have to go out and find what they needed themselves. For the first time, Elder Lu actually looked shocked. She asked if he was really about to break through. Her reaction caught him off guard. He pointed out that she'd been at the same level forever. Her breaking through would be the real miracle. He got completely fired up. He declared that he wasn't just going to break through. He was going to make the Mohist sect a household name and bring honor to it. But Elder Lu just stared at him, completely unimpressed. She thought to herself that he was just acting again, and his weird performances were happening more and more often. With his decision made, Lu Zhaoge stood with his disciples at the sect's gate. He announced it was time to go. His disciple, Haiting, had no idea what he was talking about and asked what they were even getting ready for. Miles away, Lu Dongli was traveling with a companion. He complained about their simple clothes, wondering how anyone would know he was a great master if he didn't look the part. She shot him down immediately, telling him to shut up. The simpler their clothes, the better. They needed to avoid drawing any attention to themselves, but they weren't alone. From the shadows, 2 mysterious figures watched them. One of them commented on how talkative the man was. The other simply asked what their plan was. A woman pointed down to the red forest below. She told her master that this was the flaming majestic glade, a place where a special kind of grass grew. The small girl looked worried. She asked her master what was wrong with the chief, saying he seemed lost in his own mind. Zhen Yuan explained that the chief was just meditating to gain more skills. The little girl's eyes lit up, amazed by his power and wanting to learn from him too. But the truth was, Lu Zhaoge wasn't meditating at all. He was busy choosing a mission from the system. He looked at the options, remembering exactly how this worked from his past life. He just had to decide which one to take. He knew that most ordinary players would pick the yellow missions. They were simple, safe, and quick. The more advanced players usually went for blue, and the real pros picked purple. But the orange missions, those were for people who had the insides to risk it all. He looked over the choices. Without any hesitation, he reached out and grabbed the orange mission, the most dangerous one available. He smiled to himself. He knew something others didn't. This mission wasn't nearly as tough as it looked. Far away, 2 people were traveling in secret over a burning landscape. The woman with purple hair seemed worried, asking her master if they were too close. She wondered if their targets would spot them. He just laughed, boasting that their hiding technique was so perfect that even if he stood right in front of Donley, she wouldn't see a thing. She told him to skip the weird details. She wanted to know why he was so focused on Lu Zhaoge, asking if it was because he admired him or was just envious. The master paused for a moment, considering his answer. He finally gave her a reason. He hated him. The woman was taken aback, commenting that it seemed like even the best swordswomen hated Lu Zhaoge. As they entered the flaming majestic glade, Zhen Yuan warned everyone to be careful of wild monsters. He then turned to Lu Dongli, telling her that she didn't need to hide her real power any longer. Lu Dongli just laughed, brushing off his concern. She told him him it was written all over his face and that she was perfectly capable of relying on herself. Jen Yuen just stared back, annoyed. Lu Zhaoge cut in, telling them to focus on finding the marrow-cleaning grass first. Lu Dongli immediately volunteered to explore the path ahead. The mission was simple: defeat a level 10 wild monster. Lu Zhaoge thought it seemed too easy, wondering why there would be such a weak monster with no stronger beasts around. Meanwhile, Lu Dongli was already celebrating, having found 3 stalks of marrow-cleaning grass right away. Suddenly, the young girl spotted a glowing plant. Its smell was so good that she immediately wanted to eat it. But before she could move, a pair of red eyes glowed from the darkness. Lu Zhaoge shouted for everyone to stop. A monster was here. The system locked onto the target. Lu Zhaoge stood firm, declaring that he was determined to get that grass, and no one could take it from him. Lu Dongli just sighed, thinking he was being a drama queen again, walked forward, convinced his luck would see him through. His sister watched in disbelief. She couldn't believe he'd just walk up to a hidden monster without knowing its strength. But one of the younger members of the group was completely starstruck. She thought her chief was the coolest person she'd ever seen. Lu Dongli decided to wait. If the monster was weak, she'd let her brother handle it. If it was strong, she was ready to step in and end it herself. She stayed on high alert. Far away, 2 people were watching the whole thing unfold. The woman told her master that the monster was level 10, the highest in the primary stage. She wondered what Lu Zhaoge was planning to do. The master guessed he'd try to lure the monster out and finish it with one move. But then they watched as Lu Zhaoge just sat down by a tree. They were both stunned. The guy had no plan at all. He just sat there peacefully, holding the glowing prize in his hands. Suddenly, a massive snake lunged out of the darkness. The system identified it as a level 10 pre-boss, but Lu Zhaoge didn't move. He knew an advanced hunter had to pretend to be the prey. The others panicked, yelling for their master to be careful. Lu Zhaoge, however, was completely calm. He could tell this wasn't just any pre-boss. It had the blood of a much stronger beast. Instead of backing away, Lu Zhaoge went on the attack. He swung his sword hard, slamming it right into the snake's head. The creature hissed in pain, furious. Far away, the woman watching noticed her master was acting strange. She asked him what was wrong, but he just looked away and muttered that it was nothing. But it wasn't nothing. A memory was flooding back. He remembered being younger, how his body would instinctively react to threats. He recalled his senior brother telling him and the others that they weren't even worthy of being his opponents. Even back then, he had tried to stand up for himself. He yelled that he served a sword master and shouldn't be treated like that. His senior brother didn't care. He slapped him hard across the face, telling him to get it together. That single slap had shattered all of his pride. Back in the present, Lu Zhaoge had already found the snake's weakness. It wasn't just his power. It was his incredible speed and instinct that let him strike at the perfect moment. With the fight over, Lu Zhaoge reached out his hand. He wasn't just fighting a monster. He was farming it for experience points. With one last powerful strike, his sword made contact, and it was all over. The young girl clapped, telling her master how cool he was. Lu Dongli, however, was still worried, asking what they would do if another snake appeared. Lu Zhaoge explained that his risky fighting style was the only way to win. With the danger gone, he announced it was time to settle up. The system immediately sent a notification. He had killed the monster and gained 10,000 experience points. A second message followed right after, confirming that the orange level mission was complete and his reward was ready. He was pleased with the amount of EXP. He immediately told the system to give him the reward. A massive flash of light erupted in front of him. The reward wasn't just experience points. It was an orange level attribute awakening coupon. He couldn't believe he'd gotten something so valuable. The system explained that when a talented cultivator breaks through to the next stage, they have a small chance to awaken a special attribute. This coupon guaranteed he would get one. This power would attach an element to his spiritual energy, making it much stronger. For instance, if he was favored by the world's energy, he could end up with thunder or even gale attributes. It even showed that Dongli had the gale attribute and another of his people had fire. Holding the glowing coupon, Lu Zhaoge grinned. He couldn't wait to find out what his but he knew better than to awaken his attribute out in the open. He decided to grab the special grass he needed and find a safe place first. That was the smart way to do things. He reached out and plucked just one of the glowing plants. He told his disciples that one was enough, and they should leave the rest for other lucky people to find. One of the disciples immediately flew off to scout a secure location. Lu Dongli watched him go, knowing her master was always extremely careful about security. The disciples wondered why he'd left in such a hurry, especially since he didn't take all the valuable grass. They guessed he must be on the verge of a breakthrough. Turns out, there was another reason. This particular spiritual grass was very delicate and would wither if it was taken too far from its home. Soon, they found the perfect spot by a waterfall. Lu Dongli announced that she'd checked a 10-mile radius. The place was completely safe. When Lu Zhaoge arrived, Dongli started to remind him that safety was their top priority. He didn't even respond. He just walked over and sat down, ready to begin. He held the glowing plant and focused. Almost immediately, he felt a strange energy stirring inside him, like something was about to burst out of his body. Dongli asked if he was finally about to begin, but the little girl was more interested in the glowing plant, asking if she could have a share. Before she could even finish her question, Lu Zhaoge shoved the entire thing into his mouth. He told her she couldn't have any. A second later, he was in agony. The little girl completely panicked, screaming to her master that he'd eaten something bad and needed to use the toilet. Far away, two people were watching everything unfold. The woman asked Yu Yue if Lu Chaoge was really going to break through. She reminded him that both he and Dongli had awakened their attributes the same way. He just nodded. It was true. She then turned her attention back to the waterfall. She asked if he thought Zhao Zhou really had a chance to awaken his attribute. Yu Yue immediately shot the idea down. He explained that no one had ever successfully awakened an attribute after turning 16. It just didn't happen. The woman called it a shame, but Yu Yue was certain. Zhao Ge was too old. But as they spoke, a huge wave of power exploded from Lu Chaoge. Dongli's eyes went wide. He was actually doing it. The explosion of golden light was so huge, it shook the entire area. The woman and Yu Yue stared in disbelief. He had just said it was impossible. The energy was so immense, it shot straight up into the clouds, visible for miles around. The disturbance didn't go unnoticed. Other cultivators in the area saw the light and rushed over, excited. They thought it would be fun to watch, and maybe even bet on the outcome. But as they got closer, a powerful wave of energy blasted them back. They realized this wasn't some normal disciple, and the power was overwhelming, and they scrambled to get away before they got hurt. Meanwhile, Lu Chaoge opened his eyes. He wasn't in the forest anymore. He was floating in a vast, starry space. He looked around, completely stunned. He was surrounded by glowing orbs, each one representing a different elemental force. He realized he was seeing the very source of the world's heavenly powers. He reached out, trying to grab one of the elemental powers floating around him. He just needed one to accept him. But as soon as he got close, the orbs scattered. It was like they were actively running away from him. But one of them didn't move. A powerful blue light pulsed in front of him, and he knew this was the one. At that same moment, a little girl opened her eyes. A voice echoed in her mind, telling her she was a perfect match. Dongli was standing right there, looking worried. She asked the child if something was wrong. She smiled and handed the little girl a blade of grass, telling her to eat it carefully. The girl took it without hesitation. The girl looked from Dongli to the waterfall behind her, and her eyes went wide. The water wasn't moving. It was completely frozen in midair. That's when another, even bigger, wave of golden energy exploded from Lu Chaoge. The sheer force of it seemed to shake the entire world. The little girl could only stare, completely amazed by the blinding golden light that surrounded Lu Chaoge. A powerful voice echoed from the heavens, announcing that he had awakened his attribute. The woman watching from afar was completely shocked. She explained this was an order from the heavenly law, something only the very first cultivator to awaken a heavenly power could receive. Yu Yue's expression was grim. He realized it was true. Lu Chaoge was the first one to ever awaken his attribute using this specific power. He finally identified the element. It was water. The woman wondered what kind of attribute could possibly be special enough to get this kind of attention from the heavens. The light had drawn a crowd. Other cultivators gathered from all over, wondering how many times the heavenly order would be repeated. Even a few times would be a huge deal. Meanwhile, Lu Chaoge was still in that strange space. He couldn't open his eyes and just heard a loud voice booming all around him, asking who was speaking. The voice from the heavens repeated its message again and again. That was the 6th time. The number itself was unheard of. Dongli was getting nervous. She was hoping her brother would hear the voice 9 times. Yu Yue, however, explained that according to the records, the order repeats 6 times for sure. Anything after that was up to the cultivator. His companion looked on, asking him how many times he thought the order would actually be repeated. Meanwhile, Lu Chaoge was still floating in that strange space, hearing the voice boom again and again. That's when he realized something. Turns out, the all-powerful heavenly law was just a repeater. Back in the real world, the voice echoed for the 8th time. Dongli stared in complete shock. This was unheard of. Then, a final massive wave of energy exploded outwards. The voice boomed for the 9th time. Dongli was ecstatic. He had actually done it. Hearing the 9th echo, a confident smile spread across Lu Chaoge's face. He believed he was the master of his own life. This power wasn't a gift. It was something he had earned himself. His eyes snapped open, glowing with pure golden energy. He had finally awakened his attribute. The system confirmed it. He had awakened his attribute and gained the heavenly power of water. Dongli rushed over, asking her brother how he felt. The others watched, though the little girl seemed more interested in finding tasty grass. Lu Chaoge turned to the waterfall. He raised his hand, and the water in the river began to rise, answering his call. He explained that he felt much more sensitive to everything around him. He effortlessly formed a perfect sphere of water in his palm. He could scatter it into a mist, and then pull it all back together with just a thought. He realized how much of a game changer being able to control water truly was. Dongli congratulated him on awakening his water attribute. The little girl, distracted by thoughts of food, suddenly found her hand wet. That's when Lu Chaoge revealed he could even control the water inside a person's body. A dark smile spread across his face. He explained that as long as there was a source, he could call upon water whenever and wherever he wanted. This power was even stronger than he had imagined. Dongli proudly announced that she had erased all the marks they left on their way home, annoyed that no one would see the miracle she created. Lu Chaoge just told her to be quiet. If anyone actually discovered her power, they'd be dead. He reminded her that they were supposed to be keeping a low profile. Miles away, another cultivator watched as a message flew off into the distance. He was thinking about Lu Chaoge. The man who had once dominated him was finally making his move again. Elsewhere, a woman named Master Ning was pleased that Zhao Ge was showing promise, but her expression expression quickly changed to concern. Something wasn't right. The man rushed to her side, asking why Zhao Ge hadn't successfully broken through. Master Ning's face was grim. She told him she had noticed, and the problem was even bigger than he realized. Master Ning could only hope that nothing bad would happen to him. Meanwhile, Lu Chaoge and his group were already on their way, but Lu Chaoge wasn't worried about any of that. He was looking at his system window. He had finally gathered enough experience to level up his skills, and now he had to decide which one to choose. He knew that spending too much experience now could make things harder in the future. Back with the group, Dongli offered everyone some spiritual spring water, and the little girl eagerly accepted. She turned to her brother and offered him a drink as well. Lu Chaoge looked at his sister with a confident smile. He told her he had decided exactly how many levels he was going to upgrade. Then he just took a sip from his cup. Instantly, a huge wave of energy exploded around him as he broke through to the next stage. His level shot up again and again, all the way to 15. Dongli was floored. She asked if he'd really just gained 5 levels all at once. Lu Chaoge just calmly confirmed that he had. He even asked her if it was weird, like it was the most normal thing in the world. The others watched from a distance, completely stunned. Yuyue couldn't believe it, pointing out that he had leveled up so easily without even needing to meditate, and watched from afar, completely stunned. She admitted that what Lu Chaoge did was impressive, but even a genius shouldn't be able to jump 5 levels at once. She couldn't figure out how he'd done it. Then it clicked. She grabbed Yuyue, exclaiming that she finally understood. She realized Lu Chaoge must have stayed at the primary stage on purpose. This whole time, he had his own plan. The woman asked Yuyue if he could have been that patient, holding back for years without breaking through. He looked down, admitting that he couldn't have done it. He was in awe of Lu Chaoge's self-control. She smiled, saying that when you thought about it, him upgrading 5 levels at once wasn't so surprising after all. She explained that he'd been different from other kids since he was young. Even though he was stuck at the primary stage for years, he never showed any sign of being unhappy or sad about it. She concluded that he was just a person with an incredibly strong will. Miles away, a little girl was talking with her martial brother. She asked him why their master got worked up so easily, but the man just said he didn't know. The girl just called him a man of few words and let out a little burp, but then she stopped. A strange blue light suddenly started glowing all around her. The little girl was just as confused as everyone else. She had no idea why she was glowing. She nervously asked what was happening. The woman laughed and hugged her, congratulating her on officially becoming a level 1 cultivator. The little girl couldn't believe it and started cheering. Meanwhile, a system window appeared in front of Lu Chaoge. It told him his sect finally met the requirements to be upgraded to a rank 9 sect. He didn't even have to think about it. He accepted immediately. The upgrade was successful. The Mo sect was now officially rank 9. He'd also completed a mission. The reward was a ton of experience and, more importantly, permanent +1 to his swordsmanship skill. He looked over his stats. His swordsmanship had finally reached 2 points. This was huge. It meant he could finally start working towards unlocking sword intent. Once he unlocked that, his strength would jump to a whole new level. He thought back to an old rival, remembering how weak the guy used to be. Then his eyes drifted to his own stats, specifically his maxed out charm. The thought of being a charming man just felt weird to him. Just as he finished with the upgrade, another notification popped up. The system was already giving him his second mission. The new mission was a big one. He had to upgrade the Mo sect from rank 9 all the way to rank 18. The reward was a massive amount of experience and another point in swordsmanship, but the catch was he needed 1,000 reputation points, and he was barely a third of the way there. He looked at the sect's reputation. It wasn't great, but it was a start. Just then, a new system function unlocked, the mentorship system. A smile spread across his face. He'd almost forgotten one of the easiest ways to get experience, recruiting disciples. It wouldn't be much, but every little bit would help. The scene changed. A young man with purple hair was looking at a system window. It showed the name of a master, Lu Qingfeng, but the name was grayed out. The man was dead. The young man thought back to his parents. He remembered his father smiling at his birth, but he also remembered crying over his father's coffin. He couldn't understand how their love for him could end with them both gone. He looked at the memory of his parents, his expression filled with determination. He made a promise to them that he would bring honor to the Mo sect. Chaoge turned his attention to his new mentorship system. He checked on one of his disciples, a boy named Hei Ting, and saw he was already level 10. But he remembered a time when Hei Ting was stuck. His sister had even asked why the boy was still only at the first stage. Lu Chaoge knew the kid hadn't gotten over his past. He had told Hei Ting that he was more than capable of breaking through. He looked at the boy and asked if he was still hung up on what happened before. Hei Ting's mind went back to that day. He remembered kneeling before the village elder, feeling completely powerless. The elder had gathered the whole village. He warned them that evil had taken root inside the boy and that he would bring disaster to the world if they didn't do something. The villagers were terrified. They whispered that he was evil, even blaming him for his parents' deaths. They all agreed he had to be kicked out. The entire village turned on him. He was just a small boy, all alone, surrounded by people who hated and feared him. But that's when Lu Chaoge appeared. The villagers were stunned by his powerful aura. He walked right up to the small boy and asked him directly if the rumors about him being evil were true. Lu Chaoge ignored the villagers' warnings. He told the boy he needed a servant to carry his sword and asked if he was willing to take the job. With tears in his eyes, Ting just nodded. The villagers panicked. They begged him not to get involved, terrified that the boy would bring disaster to the world. Lu Chaoge had heard enough. He yelled at them all to shut up. He declared that the boy was his disciple now, and he didn't care what might happen in the future. With a confident smile, he made it clear that whatever happened, it was on him. The boy just stared, completely stunned. With that settled, he turned his back on the village and walked away. He led the boy towards the mountain, telling him to follow close and not fall behind. The path was steep, and Ting almost slipped. But before he could fall, Lu Chaoge grabbed his hand. He told the kid the road ahead was tough, so he'd better hold on tight. For the first time, someone had chosen him. The boy couldn't hold back his tears of gratitude. Lu Chaoge thought about a cruel saying he once knew. It said the best way to break a person was to give them hope, only to rip it away later. He'd even made a similar choice when he first came to this world. But he decided he wasn't going to do that to this boy. Instead, he made a huge promise. He told Ting that one day he would become the most powerful protector in the entire world. The boy was completely stunned. Lu Chaoge continued, saying he knew the kid felt lost and confused, like his heart was stuck in a fog. With a sweeping motion, he declared that any fog in the world could be cleaned up. Ting just stared, completely speechless, and the world in front of him suddenly seemed full of possibilities. In that moment, something inside the boy clicked. It was the winter of year 14,021. Inspired by his new master, Ting, the new disciple of the Mo sect, broke through to the first stage of cultivation. And just like that, a system message appeared. It confirmed that his disciple, Ting, had successfully leveled up. As a reward, Lu Chaoge received 5,000 experience points. Lu Chaoge couldn't help but feel proud of what a good teacher he was. The little girl clapped her hands, telling her master chief he was amazing. Another master, Ningu, was stunned. He hadn't expected the boy to break through so easily, thinking his inner struggles would hold him back. He realized only someone like Lu Chaoge could pull off something like this. Later, Lu Dongli approached her brother. She reminded him that since Ting had reached the initial stage, it was time to give him a special item they had prepared. The little girl overheard the words limited edition and got confused, asking if it was something she could eat. Right on cue, her stomach let out a loud growl. She was starving. Lu Chaoge was in a great mood. He turned to an elder named Dongli and offered to show off his cooking skills. The other's eyes lit up, completely thrilled by the idea. As they flew through the air, the little girl screamed that her master was going way too fast. Lu Dongli just told her to stop asking silly questions, promising she'd understand everything later. The girl calmed down, a new thought popping into her head. She wondered if her amazing master chief was also a great cook. As the group settled in, Lu Dongli announced she was going to catch some fish for their meal. The others started setting up, pulling all sorts of supplies out of a storage rack. Lu Chaoge saw a perfect teaching opportunity. He called over the little girl, Chu, and offered to show her how a real cultivator should act. A moment later, his sister returned, proudly holding up the fish she'd caught. But Lu Chaoge was still deep in his lesson, asking Chu what to do when an enemy refuses to admit they've lost. He leaned in and told her the secret. All she had to say was, the lesson clicked instantly. Chu crossed her arms with a confident smirk. Lu Chaoge was impressed, telling her she was a fast learner. But suddenly, another disciple cried out in horror. She realized Kyo had been infected by something. His playful mood vanished. He seriously asked Chu if she felt a cold air pass by. When she said yes, he knew something was wrong. That's when Lu Dongli charged in, absolutely furious. She screamed at her brother to stay away from her disciple. Later, as he cooked the fish, Lu Chaoge tried to calm his sister down, telling her to be cautious. But little Chu just puffed out her chest, telling everyone not to be afraid as long as she was there. Lu Chaoge gave Chu a thumbs up, proud of how well she learned his lesson. But his sister, Lu Dongli, was absolutely horrified. She realized Ku was starting to act just like him. They finally arrived back at their home, Mount Darren. As they flew in, they announced that they were home, but the shout was followed by a loud burp. The little girl, Q, looked up, wondering if her master was the one who made the sound. One of the disciples playfully pinched Q's cheeks. The little girl just said the fish her master cooked was delicious. Lu Chaoge smiled to himself, remembering he'd learned to cook just to make someone happy. When they landed, a man named Xiao Ge and a woman called Aunt Ning were already there waiting. They called out, welcoming Lu Chaoge and his sister Dongli back home. Aunt Ning complimented Xiao Ge on his breakthrough, joking about his excellent acting skills. Then she turned to Lu Chaoge and playfully asked for his flying boat as a reward. Lu Chaoge just looked at Xiao Ge for a moment. Then he smiled and patted him on the head like a proud senior. Xiao Ge seemed to be enjoying it, which completely shocked his sister, Dongli. She remembered he always fought back when she tried that. She suddenly wondered if something was seriously wrong with him. Lu Chaoge cleared his throat and told everyone to head inside. Aunt Ning smiled, offering to help anyone who was having trouble with their training. As they walked toward the main hall, Aunt Ning offered to help Dongli with any training problem she had. Once they were all settled inside, Dongli gratefully thanked Aunt Ning, saying all her questions had been answered. Aunt Ning then turned to Xiao Ge, asking if he had any problems. He admitted that he did, wondering how a weaker swordsman should approach breaking through to the next stage of sword intent. He explained that he needed 100,000 experience points to unlock his sword intent. He was trying to figure out if it was better to focus on that or just use the points to level up. Liu Chaozhi began to explain. He said that a swordsman becomes much stronger every time they break through with sword intent. Without it, their strength only goes up a little, but with it, everything changes. Aunt Ning pointed out that Zhao Ge was still too weak to understand it right now, and trying would just be a waste of time. But Zhao Ge didn't seem to hear her. He jumped up and promised Liu Chaozhi he'd work hard to master sword intent and wouldn't let him down. The sudden outburst made Aunt Ning spit out her tea. Aunt Ning was completely confused, wondering why he was making promises to Liu Chaozhi. In the background, even his sister Dongli was stunned, muttering that this was impossible. He scoffed at the idea. He told Zhaoji that mastering sword intent wasn't nearly as simple as he thought. He explained that he had to work like crazy, constantly walking the line between life and death just to get his first glimpse into its world. He claimed that if he had truly mastered it back then, he would have been strong enough to surpass even the Lord's sword. That was the level he was talking about, the level of a sword king. Zhaoji looked at Zhao Ge with disapproval, telling him he shouldn't have taken sword intent so lightly. Liu Chaozhi watched silently, still wondering what was going on with him. But Dongli had heard enough. She was furious that Zhaoji was looking down on her brother, thinking he was doomed for his disrespect. Inside, Dongli knew her brother was aiming too high, but she felt she had to protect his dignity. Seeing the tension, Aunt Ning chimed in, mentioning that another disciple had also managed to grasp sword intent. She smiled and suggested they have a friendly fight to settle things. Zhaoji's anger flared. He felt like Zhao Ge was looking down on him by refusing to even draw his sword. He yelled at Zhao to unsheath his sword and fight for real. From across the field, Zhao Ge simply told him he was mistaken. Zhao Ge explained that he had sealed his sword for 9 years and wouldn't draw it for him. Zhao Ge didn't want to hear any more excuses and demanded he stop stalling. He announced that if Zhao Ge wouldn't draw his sword willingly, he'd force him to. With that, he charged forward. The fight began in a flurry of clashing energy. The little girl watched from below, completely amazed by her Master Chief's skills. Above her, the two continued their high-speed battle. Aunt Ning watched with a serious look. She admitted that Zhao Ge was holding his own with clever moves, but she knew he would lose if the fight dragged on like this. She kept attacking, getting more and more frustrated. He screamed at Zhao Ge to draw his sword and fight for real. But Zhao Ge just calmly blocked the attack. He asked why Zhao was so desperate for him to use his sword when he couldn't even handle a basic sword intent. Zhao Ge then offered to lend him some of his own intent. Hearing this, Zhao got even angrier and finally unleashed his full power, a wave of red energy flooding the area. The girl watching from the side felt the pressure on her own blade, but Zhao Ge just stood there, completely unimpressed, saying the sword intent was too weak to even make his own sword react. Furious, Zhao gathered all his energy into one final, massive attack. He warned Zhao Ge that this was his strongest move. As the giant wave of energy rushed towards him, Zhao Ge just watched. He finally understood the real difference between having sword intent and not having it. He stood in the middle of the storm, completely untouched. It was all clear to him now. With his eyes glowing, he gave a mental command. That's when the system messages appeared. He had successfully unlocked sword intent. Yu Yu unleashed his ultimate move, a massive wave of blue energy called the Lonely Sword. He screamed at Zhao Ge to get ready and try to keep up. The energy rushed forward, but Zhao Ge just stood there, completely calm, as if it was nothing to worry about. His sister panicked, yelling that Yu Yu's attack was a special skill that couldn't be stopped. Aunt Ning, however, looked on calmly, sure that Zhao Ge would be safe. But a second later, her calm expression vanished. She stared in disbelief, realizing something was happening that she hadn't expected at all. A massive boom echoed through the air. From the sidelines, both Yu Yu and the sister could only stare, trying to understand what just happened. That's when it hit her. Her jaw dropped as she realized the impossible had happened. Her brother had just awakened his sword intent right there on the spot. Meanwhile, the little girl Gilly was completely starstruck. She thought her Master Chief looked like a hero from a painting, convinced that no other man could ever compare. Zhao Ge finally opened his eyes. As Yu Yu's blade came down, he simply raised 2 fingers and stopped it cold. A blue aura flared around his hand. He now had his own sword intent. Yu Yu stared in shock. The feeling coming from Zhaoji's fingers was just like his own sword intent. Zhaoji just smirked, casually asking if this was really supposed to be so difficult. With a flick of his fingers, Zhaoji shattered Yu Yu's attack completely. Yu Yu was blown back, screaming that it was impossible. Zhaoji had a complete sword intent. The dark energy washed over Yu Yu. He couldn't accept what was happening, screaming over and over that he didn't believe it. The fight turned into a blur of motion, but now Zhao Ge was the one pressing the attack, his dark energy clashing against Yu Yu's blade. Zhaoji's strikes were too fast. Yu Yu was forced back again and again, barely able to defend himself. That's when Zhao Ge unleashed a swirling vortex of dark energy. Yu Yu was pulled in with no way to escape. Inside the darkness, blades of pure energy slammed down, pinning Yu Yu in place. When the energy finally faded, it was over. Zhao Ge stood over his opponent, his sword at Yu Yu's neck, and calmly told him that he had lost. Yu Yu was completely stunned. He couldn't understand how it all went so wrong. His mind flashed back to all the hard work he'd put in. He remembered sealing away his own power just to focus completely on mastering the sword. He had fought against masters and battled huge beasts all on his own. It was a long and difficult path to get where he was. After all that sacrifice, seeing Liu Chaozhi awaken his sword intent so easily was just too much. He admitted defeat, but he had one question. Why? Liu Chaozhi activated a windshield, creating a private space around them. He calmly told Yu Yue to ask his question. Yu Yue explained that he'd studied everything he could find from past masters. He was told he was doing great for his level, but he still couldn't figure it out. He just couldn't understand how Liu Chaozhi had done it. Liu Chaozhi pointed out that Yu Yue had access to all the wisdom of the masters who came before him. He was standing on the shoulders of giants. So, he asked, with all that knowledge, why couldn't he see the truth? Liu Chaozhi declared that historical records were meant to be broken. That one statement seemed to hit Yu Yue hard. It was as if a light had turned on in Yu Yue's mind. He bowed his head, finally admitting defeat. Watching from the side, Liu Chaozhi's sister panicked, thinking her brother's strange talk had somehow broken Yu Yue. But Yu Yue had one last question. He asked Liu Chaozhi when he had first started to comprehend the true meaning of sword intent. Liu Chaozhi's answer was simple and completely unbelievable. He claimed he'd been understanding it since the very first moment he ever carried a sword. The crowd stared in total shock. Inside, Liu Chaozhi was just happy. His system had given him the points he needed. Yu Yue bowed again, thanking him for the lesson. The moment seemed to resolve everything, but Yu Yue wasn't finished. He asked if he could have a look at Liu Chaozhi's sword. The friendly atmosphere vanished in an instant. Liu Chaozhi's eyes turned cold. He told Yu Yue that his sword was only for killing, and that it wasn't something for him to see. The comment hit Yu Yue hard. It was obvious the words brought back a memory he'd rather forget. He was remembering a terrible incident from the past. A mysterious, evil cultivator had appeared, causing chaos and killing the parents of a man named Liu Zhao before finally being stopped. The evil cultivator's power was immense, taking the form of a terrifying, fiery dragon. It all clicked for Yu Yue. If that sword was meant to defeat such a monster, then it held unimaginable power. He realized he had no right to even look at it. The memory ended with Liu Zhao, the man who had lost his parents. He made a vow that the day the sword was finally drawn would be the day he got his revenge. The duel settled, Liu Chaozhi walked alone under the moonlight. He was already scheming, thinking about his new guests, Aunt Ning and Yu Yue, and how he could use them to his advantage. Miles away, a woman with purple hair suddenly sneezed. She wondered who was talking about her, but quickly brushed it off. She decided to focus on making a protective flying tool instead. Meanwhile, news of what happened was already spreading. One man was furious, unable to believe that Yu Yue had gained enlightenment after being defeated. But Yu Yue himself was grateful, thanking Liu Chaozhi in his thoughts for the lesson he had learned. Even Liu Chaozhi's sister was thinking about him. She reminded herself that she also had a system and didn't need to be impressed since she'd just broken through to a new stage herself. Back in his corner of the world, Liu Chaozhi just smiled, looking very pleased with the chaos he'd caused. Later that night, Liu Chaozhi went to an old stone marker. He held up a paper talisman and called out for his benefactor. In response, a purple spirit began to form out of thin air. He turned to the spirit and asked if she could tell that he was different today. He figured that even if she wasn't the smartest, she was powerful enough to recognize he'd broken through to a new level. But the spirit just floated there silently, leaving him completely dumbfounded. He got annoyed and asked her directly if she couldn't see he'd gotten stronger, demanding to know if there was any reward for him. The spirit simply pointed at him. Liu Chaozhi got flustered, realizing she was offering her blood essence again. He complained under his breath, saying that if it wasn't for the help she gave his sect hundreds of years ago, he'd never accept. The spirit then presented a hand, showing him a glowing green ring. He explained the deal he had with the spirit. She had signed a contract to protect his sect, but every sect leader had to pay a price, and that price was his own blood essence, something incredibly valuable. As he offered it up, he felt the energy drain right out of him. The spirit seemed thrilled, floating around cheerfully. Liu Chaozhi just watched, completely exhausted, and complained that she was enjoying his suffering. But the deal was the deal. A blast of energy hit the stone marker, and a glowing scroll appeared. It was a cultivation method called the air-consuming spell. He knew this spell. It was a low-tier technique that let a cultivator absorb the air around them like drinking water. Not exactly impressive, but better than nothing. But as he looked closer, a system window popped up. Turns out, it wasn't a low-tier spell at all. It was a purple rank, mid-tier technique. He couldn't believe his eyes. He turned to the spirit, completely confused. He asked if she'd made some kind of mistake. The spirit just made a strange clicking sound. Liu Chaozhi wondered if it was broken, but then a new idea hit him. What if this was just the second volume? Maybe it could even reach the legendary orange rank. Suddenly, it all made sense. A huge, greedy smile spread across his face. He told the spirit he was ready to offer up even more of his blood essence if it meant getting something this good. He asked the spirit if he could get all the volumes of the technique if he offered up even more of his blood essence? The spirit just floated there, completely silent. Lu Chaoge tried to figure out what it was thinking. He wondered if they were somehow connected, but then decided he'd probably just gotten used to being around it. The spirit gave a little wave and then disappeared. Elsewhere, a woman watched the spirit fade away. She felt a wave of frustration, wondering why she couldn't seem to succeed, and broke down in tears. Her young disciple, Chu, tried to comfort her. She told her master not to cry, proudly stating that she was the future of the Mohist sect. This only made the master more worried. She feared that if Chu acted so recklessly, she might end up dead. But Chu just puffed out her chest, asking if it was because she was special. That's when it hit her. Chu was acting just like her brother. She realized she would have to find a new way to protect her. Lu Dongli grabbed Chu by the collar and gave her a very serious warning. She told the girl that from now on, she was forbidden from telling anyone that she was her disciple. Instead, she instructed Chu to tell everyone that she was Lu Zhaoge's disciple. The young girl's eyes went wide, completely confused by the strange order. Lu Dongli felt a headache coming on. She remembered all the stories her brother told her about talented people who got themselves killed just by trying to show off. She could already see Chu following that same dangerous path. She started to worry. If Kyo's big mouth got her into trouble, would she be the one who had to fight her battles? Maybe it would be safer to just let her brother take care of the girl. Chu was adorable. There was no denying that. But her cuteness wouldn't protect her from making enemies. That settled it. Lu Dongli's eyes lit up with a new plan. She decided that from that day on, she would take Chu as her one and only disciple, making her a personal guard. She also made a second rule. Until Q was strong enough, she was not allowed to leave the mountain under any circumstances. She started to swear an oath to seal her decision, but then she stopped. What would happen if those rules were broken? A new idea seemed to pop into her head. To seal the deal, she swore a powerful oath, and she swore it on the life of her own brother, Lu Zhaosh. With that, her plan was set. She was determined not to train another disciple who would turn out like her last one, a girl named Luobing. A memory came back to her. She once thought of Luobing as her most beloved disciple, but it turned out the girl had other intentions. She wanted to become her brother's wife. Far away, completely unaware of the drama, Lu Chaoge suddenly sneezed. He sat up, annoyed, wondering who was badmouthing him. Lu Chaoge sat alone under the night sky. He decided to forget everything else and just focus on cultivation. Experience points were all that mattered now. He immediately started pulling in all the spiritual energy around him. The system lit up, showing he was gaining thousands of experience points every second. But this method was brutal. The sheer force of the energy slammed into his body, and he coughed up blood from the strain. He collapsed, realizing he couldn't keep risking his life like this. He started to wonder if there wasn't a more comfortable way to get stronger. His mind started to wander to other, more pleasant cultivation methods. If only he had a partner to help him, things would be awesome. But then, his imagination took a dark turn. He realized that in that situation, he'd probably be the one who ended up completely drained. He shook the thought from his head and looked up at the sky. That's when he noticed something strange near the moon. A woman was flying toward him on a glowing treasure. He recognized her and asked what his Aunt Ning was doing there. She explained that his flying treasure was finally ready, and she had come to deliver it herself. Aunt Ning held him close, asking why he was in such a hurry to leave. She explained that she was a busy person with things to do back at her sect. Then she held out a glowing, leaf-shaped treasure and asked him if he liked it. He stared at the gift, completely shocked. He quickly realized this was no ordinary flying treasure. It was a rare, blue-rank item with a hidden defensive shield built into it. It was far more valuable than he could have imagined. He was genuinely touched. It was clear his Aunt Ning really cared about him. Seeing his reaction, she asked if he didn't like it. He quickly said he did, but admitted it was a bit unusual. Then he carefully put the treasure away. She just rolled her eyes and told him to work on his cultivation. Lu Chaoge didn't need to be told twice. He was already determined to work hard, especially if it meant extending his life. His comment about his lifespan seemed to stun her. A memory flashed through his mind, reminding him of his biggest goal. He was determined to make his dreams a reality, no matter what dangers he had to face. He looked up at the moon, remembering something his mother always said. The key to success was to never look back. His aunt then handed him a glowing book. She explained it contained 10 simple methods for crafting treasures and suggested he give it a try. He was stunned. He'd just been handed a skill book, just like that. With that, she announced it was time for her to leave. Lu Chaoge waved and wished her a safe trip. As she flew off, he shouted for her to visit again when she had time. Nearby, a couple of other people were getting ready to leave as well. Her treasure was just a small light streaking across the night sky. Suddenly, something shot past his head and slammed into the ground. It was a dagger with a message attached, sent from the golden sect. He stared down at it, his eyes narrowing. This was a direct challenge. The message was from the Sword Alliance, one of the most powerful organizations in the world. It was made up of 300 different sects. These sects were divided into 3 categories: the upper 100, the middle 100, and the lower 100. The Mo sect was right at the very bottom of the lower 100. To most people, all the sects in this tier were so weak, it wasn't even worth ranking them. But Lu Chaoge knew that wasn't quite right. The golden sect, the ones who had just challenged them, were also in the lower tier, barely above them. He scoffed at the thought of them being so powerful. Nearby, Chief He held the dagger, absolutely furious. He couldn't believe the golden sect's arrogance, especially since the Mo sect was supposed to be in charge of this area. He remembered how his sect used to be the one calling the shots. Now, with his father gone, the Golden Sect thought they could just bully them. He threw the dagger away in disgust. As it flew, he used his power to write a message in the air. He made it clear the Golden Sect had no right to act so tough in front of him. Lu Chaoge wasn't going to just take that. With a simple wave of his hand, he sent his own message flying back, telling them to get lost. The message shot through the night sky like a falling star, heading straight for the Golden Sect. Meanwhile, inside the Golden Sect, a woman told Chief He that it was time to take leadership of the region. They both laughed at the idea of Lu Chaoge being a threat, calling him a weakling who would be a laughingstock at the gathering. Just then, Chief He noticed a bright light heading straight for them. He caught the message easily. The woman joked that maybe Lu Chaoge was already trying to surrender and work for them. He opened it to see what was said, but it wasn't a letter. It was a blast of dark, powerful energy. The energy formed a single, flaming character in the air. They stared in disbelief. The woman was furious, saying he was acting like he was checking up on his underlings. Chief, he crushed the message, his face filled with rage. The woman just scoffed, calling Lu Chaoge rude for thinking he could get away with something like this. The woman suggested they teach Lu Chaoge a lesson at the upcoming gathering. Chief, he agreed, a smirk on his face. He was already thinking of a plan to crush Lu Chaoge's arrogance. Back at the Mo sect, the moon was full and bright. Inside, Lu Chaoge was talking with his sister, Lu Dongli. She asked why she couldn't go with him to the gathering of the chiefs. He explained that everyone thought their sect was weak, and it wasn't the right time to show their true strength. She offered to just pretend to be a little stronger, but he wasn't having it. He told her flat out to just stay home. Suddenly, a gust of wind blew through the open room. Lu Chaoge felt it instantly. There was a purity in the wind. His sister stared at him, her eyes wide. She realized he had just made a breakthrough. Lu Dongli was furious. She couldn't believe he'd made a breakthrough so fast when she'd been practicing in secret for years. He just looked at her, confused by her anger, and asked why she disliked his first disciple so much. Elsewhere, another man was lost in thought. He tried to explain that this girl was much prettier than Liu Bing or his own disciple, and that should be a good thing. But that was definitely the wrong thing to say. She grabbed his face, furious. She yelled that she knew he'd fallen for the girl, and she wouldn't allow it. He just begged her to stop, saying she was ruining his face. She couldn't stand the thought of her own disciple becoming her sister-in-law and bossing her around. Far away from all that, a woman named Liu Bing stood alone. She remembered being sold to a brother when she was only 6 years old. The boss had raised her for years, teaching her everything, but now she was being presented on a stage. The crowd buzzed with excitement, calling her the prettiest lady they'd ever seen. They knew today was her birthday, and the day her first night would be sold. One man shouted that he had to have her. Liu Bing stood there, clenching her hands, her whole body tense with anxiety. Down below, the auctioneer's voice rang out, announcing that the bidding for her first night was about to begin. The bids started flying, climbing higher and higher. The competition got so heated that one man started yelling at another, accusing him of driving up the price on purpose. From a balcony above, other women watched the scene unfold. They gossiped about how crazy the men were. One of them admitted she was jealous, since her own first night had sold for much less. One of them just scoffed. She was confident in her own skills and couldn't believe the men were so blind, wondering why they weren't bidding on her instead. But on stage, Liu Bing wasn't even listening to the bids. The louder the crowd yelled, the more alone she felt. It was like a sad story she'd read before. She knew that any hope of being saved was just a dream. Then, a single voice cut through the noise with an unbelievable bid. 10,000 taels. The entire hall went silent. Everyone turned to see a young man standing calmly in the crowd. He repeated his offer, saying he'd take the girl for that price. The crowd erupted in whispers, calling him an idiot for spending so much money. But up on the stage, the auctioneer just smiled. She praised him for his good taste. The auctioneer praised him, saying he was different from the other men. But Lu Chaoge just smiled. He told her he wasn't interested in the girl for the usual reasons. He was just going to buy her and take her away. On the stage, Liu Bing's heart raced. She just wanted him to take her away from this place. The auctioneer, however, only saw the money. 10,000 taels was a great deal. After all, she knew that girls in her line of work didn't usually live very long. With the deal settled, she shoved Liu Bing forward, telling her to go to her new master. Liu Bing stumbled right into him, quietly calling him master. Lu Chaoge settled the payment in a single move, tossing a stack of banknotes into the air. As the notes fluttered down, Liu Bing just stared at him. That night, it felt like her Prince Charming had fallen from the sky, like an angel, just to save her. The auctioneer handed Lu Chaoge the contract, officially making the girl his property. The other women nearby watched with jealousy, whispering about how lucky she was to be saved by someone so handsome. The auctioneer shoved her forward, telling her to go to her master. Liu Bing looked up at him, thinking that from this moment on, her life belonged to him. But then, Lu Chaoge did something no one expected. He ripped the contract right in half and tossed the pieces aside. He told her there was no need for it. She was free now. The auctioneer stared in complete shock. She couldn't believe he'd just destroy a contract he paid 10,000 taels of silver for. Liu Bing looked at him, her eyes wide with understanding. She knew he wasn't an idiot at all. She told him that from now on, she was his, whether there was a contract or not. With that settled, Lu Chaoge said it was time to go. Another woman, one of his people, gently took the girl by the arm to lead her away. And just like that, they walked out into the night, leaving that place and her old life behind for good. As they walked, she looked up and gasped. The lanterns were so beautiful. She whispered that it was her first time ever leaving that place. Lu Chaoge told her this was just the beginning, that she'd see even more beautiful things in the future. But she just looked at him, thinking she'd already seen the most beautiful thing in the world. His sister, Lu Dongli, was not happy about this at all. She couldn't stand how the new girl kept staring at her brother. Lu Chaoge, ignoring his sister's mood, just suggested they take a walk and enjoy the beautiful lanterns. Lu Dongli snapped back, telling him to mind his own business. She was clearly in a bad mood, but Lu Chaoge just walked on, unbothered. But inside, Lu Chaoge was celebrating. He knew he'd hit the jackpot. He could see Luo Bing's stats, and they were incredibly powerful. More than that, the system showed there was a chance to unlock a hidden plotline with her. Even though the 10,000 taels of silver had drained all of the Mosek's money, he knew it was a total bargain. Suddenly, his sister started pulling his hair. She told him to stop, worried that their disciples would see them fighting, and it would make her look bad. But she didn't care. She kept pulling until he got a nosebleed. Then she froze. She realized Luo Bing was getting closer, and she could sense a powerful aura coming from her, one that was getting stronger by the second. Far away, in a forest, filled with glowing butterflies and falling petals, a woman stood alone. She reached out and gently touched a tree. Her eyes were calm as she felt a new power settle within her. She had finally reached the first stage. With her goal achieved, her thoughts turned to someone else. She realized it had been a long time since she'd seen the Lord. She sent out a mental command, summoning someone to her room. Far away, another woman looked up. Having heard the call, she accepted the order, ready to go to her Lord. The woman floated under the moonlight, surrounded by glowing petals. She realized someone was waiting for her, and she understood this was a test of her feelings. Back with Lu Chaoge and his sister, the tension was thick. He looked at her and commented on how determined she seemed. He calmly told her to watch her attitude. That just made her angrier. She demanded to know why he wasn't taking her to the chief gathering and was taking Luo Bing instead. He smirked and asked if she was jealous. She immediately denied it, puffing out her cheeks and insisting she wasn't. She chugged her tea and slammed the cup on the table, demanding a proper explanation. For a second, Lu Chaoge looked a little nervous. He explained that the chief gathering was more than just a meeting. It was a chance to show off the sect's power, and taking his sister would be a bad move since everyone knew she was hiding her true strength. That's why, after thinking it over, he decided Luo Bing was the best choice to represent the sect. Hearing his logic, his sister finally started to understand. He explained that the more beautiful women a sect chief brings, the more powerful and mysterious the sect appears. He even teased her, saying she might get to lead them one day. She just looked at him suspiciously. Just then, a woman with petals floating around her walked in. She introduced herself as Lu Bing and greeted the Master Chief. She let out a slow breath, using a special breathing technique she had learned. A faint glow surrounded her. She walked up to the table, easily ignoring Lu Chaoge's sister. She politely greeted the other disciple, calling him Martial Brother Haiting. Lu Chaoge watched her, completely unaffected. He thought to himself that every time he saw her, it felt like looking at a perfect picture from his old world. Luo Bing was amazed. She had used all her breathing techniques, but he remained perfectly calm. She was impressed by his strong will and wished she could stay with him for a while. Getting back to business, Lu Chaoge told Luo Bing that he wanted her to attend the chief gathering with him in 3 days. He silently admitted to himself that he'd gotten a bit carried away because she reminded him of his pure-hearted girlfriend from his past life. Luo Bing's face lit up. She saw her chance and happily accepted the offer. Nearby, Lu Chaoge's sister was fuming, unable to hide her jealousy. The cup in her hand shattered from the force of her grip. The sudden crack made both Lu Chaoge and Haiting look over in surprise. Lu Dongli shot to her feet, absolutely furious. She couldn't stand the idea of anyone becoming her sister. As his sister stormed off, Lu Chaoge turned to Haiting and asked if he'd offended her. Haiting nervously confirmed that he had. Haiting immediately started to panic, trying to apologize to his master. To fix the awkward silence, he quickly offered to pour him some tea. But before he could, Luo Bing appeared and gently stopped him, saying she would handle it. She began to pour the tea, using a special skill called tea art to make every movement look graceful and charming. She was sure this technique could charm anyone, even the Master Chief. She also realized Dongli wasn't really angry, just jealous. But Lu Chaoge didn't even look at her. She couldn't believe it. He was ignoring her completely again. Lu Chaoge watched her, thinking to himself that Luo Bing was definitely good at charming people. But after everything he'd experienced in his past life, he was completely immune to it. Luo Bing watched him, completely captivated. His calm eyes and elegant presence made him seem like he wasn't from this world. That's when she decided. She told herself that if he fell for her little tricks, he'd fall hard. She had to use everything she had to make him hers. Lu Chaoge could see the determination in her eyes. He realized she was dead set on coming after him, which was a total shock. In his past life, he was always the one doing the chasing. With only 3 days until the big feast, Luo Bing decided to take matters into her own hands. She told Haiting to let her handle things from now on. She started wiping the table, using her tea art to make every move look appealing. She bent over just enough, hoping to catch his eye. But Lu Chaoge was completely unimpressed. He asked if she was done, pointing out that she was about to wear a hole in the table. Her plan had failed, so she tried a different tactic. She accidentally spilled water all over herself, crying out that her clothes were wet. The fabric became almost see-through, another part of her plan. Lu Chaoge just got annoyed. He asked how she could be so clumsy and told Hiding to get her out of his sight. Luo Bing was speechless. Luo Bing collapsed in defeat. All her plans had failed spectacularly. Hiding tried to help cover her up, but she stopped him. She wasn't done yet. Her next move was to pretend to fall, hoping to get his attention that way. But Lu Chaoge was completely unimpressed. He just ordered Hiding to change the bedsheets for him. 3 days later, on the morning of the gathering, he was already cultivating his energy. Luo Bing watched him, amazed. Even when he was just training, he had this incredible, otherworldly presence. He finished his training and let out a breath. It was time to leave. Luo Bing agreed immediately. With that, they set off. As they flew towards the gathering, Lu Chaoge was already annoyed. He couldn't believe his sister was so mad that she didn't even come to see him off. Luo Bing, on the other hand, was thrilled. It was the first time she'd ever traveled alone with him. Her mind started racing with possibilities. She got so flustered that she accidentally said her thoughts out loud. Realizing her mistake, she turned bright red and covered her face in embarrassment. Lu Chaoge just stared at her, completely unimpressed. He asked her to repeat what she had just said. Panicking, Luo Bing tried to change the subject by showering him with compliments. She went on and on about how amazing he looked and how he would surely dominate the gathering. She thought to herself that this was the perfect strategy. She remembered reading that the best way to a man's heart was through praise. But Lu Chaoge had heard enough. He waved his hand dismissively and told her to stop kissing up to him. Luo Bing froze, completely misunderstanding his words. Instead of being offended, she thought his crude remark was actually an invitation. A wave of happiness washed over her, convinced her plan had finally worked. Suddenly, Luo Bing completely lost it and lunged right at him. Lu Chaoge had to use his energy just to hold her back, yelling at her to calm down. He let out a tired. He couldn't believe her behavior, thinking to himself that her upbringing must have been seriously lacking. Luo Bing changed her strategy, trying to act like a servant by offering him a drink. But Lu Chaoge wasn't having it and told her she didn't need to serve him like that. She looked at him with pleading eyes, quietly reminding him that he was the one who brought her here. He thought for a second, then told her to give him one more. She immediately handed him a piece of fruit. As he drank, Luo Bing asked why he always called her by her full name. She wondered if he would prefer a more intimate nickname instead. A look of determination crossed her face. She decided to try one last, desperate idea. She leaned in and offered him the drink again, but this time she called him Honey. The sudden change was so shocking that Lu Chaoge spat his drink out everywhere. He finally snapped and told her to shut her mouth. He thought to himself that her upbringing must have been terrible. Still, he couldn't help but admit that men do like being called that. Soon after, they arrived at their destination, Moon Peak, the location for the chief gathering. He looked completely ready for whatever was about to happen. But when they got to the meeting place, it was completely empty. One of his disciples reported that he saw some people nearby. Lu Chaoge looked over. Lu Chaoge didn't even seem to care. He told his companion to just ignore them, saying they were only there to try and fool them. The woman who had just arrived was furious. She couldn't believe they were trying to intimidate her lord. Turns out, the master had sent them specifically to intimidate Lu Chaoge. They were determined to put on a good show. The man stepped forward and started to ask if he was the chief of the Mo sect. But Lu Chaoge didn't even bother to turn around. Instead of answering, he secretly activated a wind spell. Golden leaves swirled around him as the two challengers just stared, completely dumbfounded. The man was completely thrown off. He hadn't even finished his sentence. They had to come up with a new plan on the spot. So, they bowed respectfully. They introduced themselves as Zhong Chuanjian and Liu Shangling and formally challenged the chief. They thought this was a brilliant move. By being polite, they were forcing his hand. But Lu Chaoge still didn't move. The challengers waited, getting more and more frustrated. They couldn't understand why he wasn't responding. Finally, the man decided he'd just get up on his own. But as the man tried to stand, both he and his partner were hit by an invisible force. It felt incredibly heavy, pushing them down so hard they couldn't even lift their heads. Lu Chaoge just watched them struggle, a small smile on his face. He thought to himself that he could crush them whenever he wanted. Deciding he'd seen enough, he gathered a small bit of energy in his hand. With just a flick of his wrist, both challengers were sent flying through the air. His companion thought they deserved it. The male challenger, trying to act tough, claimed it was just a low-level attack. That's when another man walked up, suggesting they all go talk in the pavilion. He started explaining the situation, talking about a territory dispute between his chief and another sect. The man, Li Jiao, then told Lu Chaoge that he just needed to divide the land. He spoke as if it was already decided. Lu Chaoge just stared back, not saying a word. Suddenly, Li Jiao lunged forward, drawing his weapon to strike. But before he could even land a hit, it was over. Li Jiao was on the ground, completely beaten. The female challenger was in shock. She realized Lu Chaoge had taken him down just by lifting a finger. Lu Chaoge decided he'd heard enough. He told the man he was being too noisy, and then unleashed a wave of energy, silencing him completely. The force slammed into Li Jiao. He struggled against it, but he couldn't even open his mouth to make a sound. His companion watched, completely stunned. She realized that only a true master could use heavenly power so casually. She thought to herself that he was just as commanding as ever. Li Zhouge was on the ground, bleeding out. He begged his companion to help him. She looked over at Lu Chaoge. completely frozen. She wanted to help her partner, but she was terrified that if she moved, she'd be next. But Lu Chaog just calmly asked for some tea. The woman looked up, surprised. She thought maybe he was giving her permission to help. Taking the chance, she quickly started hitting his pressure points to stop the bleeding. She let out a breath of relief, but when she looked back at Lu Chaoge, the fear returned. She couldn't believe the so-called useless chief had such a terrifying vibe. Lu Chaoji took a slow sip of his tea. Then he looked at her and asked if she wanted a cup. The woman's face went pale. She instantly understood. He wasn't inviting her for tea. He was telling her to get lost right now. Without another thought, she started dragging her partner away as fast as she could. Lu Chaoji's companion smiled. She noted that the woman knew exactly what he meant. He agreed, saying it was an obvious threat that even a fool could understand. Lu Chaoj told his companion to sit down, assuring her that they were safe. He poured her a cup of tea, calmly mentioning that the people from the Golden Sect would be back soon. As she sat there, she couldn't stop thinking about his power. That single finger move he used was just incredible. She stole a glance at him, thinking to herself that he was still as breathtakingly handsome as ever. Lu Chaoge looked out at the beautiful view. He thought it was a perfect scene, but he knew he couldn't let his guard down, or she'd get bolder. He was in such a good mood that even the blood spilled earlier seemed like beautiful red flowers blooming. Far away from the peaceful pavilion, the female challenger was running for her life. She couldn't believe how strong that guy was. He was an absolute monster. She dragged the injured Li Jiaoge along with her. He cried that they needed to report this to their master, then complained that she could just use her sword to fly. She finally snapped and told him to stop talking. With an angry yell, she threw him into the distance. The two challengers finally made it back to their home, the Golden Sect. She kicked him right into the middle of the courtyard. Another sect member ran over, shocked to see how badly Li Jiaoge's face was beaten. Meanwhile, the leaders of the Golden Sect were celebrating their plans for expansion. Their good mood was cut short when the two challengers came running in, yelling that Lu Jiaoge had beaten them. The master was furious. He couldn't believe Lu Jiaoge would dare to do this. The woman beside him, however, just watched with a calm expression. He shoved some kind of medicine into Li Jiaoge's mouth. After he swallowed, the master demanded he explain everything that happened. So, Li Jiaoge quickly explained the entire fight from start to finish, not leaving out a single detail. The master listened, his expression growing serious. He honed in on one detail, asking if it was true that Lu Jiaoge beat him with just a single finger. Li Jiaoge explained that it was more than that. He felt the power of heaven and earth coming from Lu Jiaoge. This stunned the leaders. They thought he was just some weak chief, stuck at a low level of power. The woman beside the master looked worried. She told her leader she had something to say, but warned that it might sound unbelievable. The master just told her to speak her mind. She started by reminding them of a powerful event from a few days ago, a message that echoed from the heavenly law itself. Everyone in the room looked stunned as they remembered. The master recalled the event, admitting it was so impressive that he'd wanted to investigate it himself. He remembered flying out to find the source, determined to recruit whoever was powerful enough to cause such a stir. But as he got closer, a massive force stopped him cold. He realized he was facing a truly great cultivator and had to back off. Back in the present, he explained that this powerful protector had blocked his view. He then revealed his shocking theory. The one who caused the echo, the one with the favor of the heavenly law, was probably Lu Jiaoge. The master grabbed his head, completely losing his cool. Not only did Lu Jiaoge have the favor of the heavens, but he also had an incredibly powerful supporter. The realization was too much. The master collapsed into his chair, muttering that he was doomed. His followers just watched, confused, wondering if their leader had completely lost his mind. The woman put it all together. Lu Jiaoge had the 9 echoes from the heavenly law. Compared to him, their own chief was a nobody. She looked at her master with disgust, thinking he'd misled her. She decided she'd go talk to the Mo sect herself and use her charm to build a good relationship with Lu Jiaoge. The master, however, was in a full-blown panic. He yelled for them to gather all the elders and resources to give back to the Mo sect. His followers were completely stunned. He screamed at them to shut up and just do what he said. He slapped his own forehead in frustration. The woman just watched him, thinking to herself how unreliable men were. Miles away, Lu Jiaoge was enjoying the view when he got a notification from the system. His companion couldn't help but stare, thinking he was as handsome as ever. The system announced that the Mo sect's reputation had gone up because of the fear from the Golden Sect and Fall Water Sect. Lu Jiaoge looked at the numbers. He figured the 500 points meant his warning had been received, but he knew he couldn't get much more from 2 small sects like them. He knew that dealing with 2 small sects was just the beginning. His mind was already on how to handle the bigger players. All the while, his companion just stared at him, completely lost in thought. He finally noticed her intense gaze and turned to look at her, a little confused. He asked if there was something on his face. She just kept staring and nodded, which didn't help him at all. Realizing what she was doing, she got completely flustered. She quickly said that nothing was wrong, and she was just lost in thought. Lu Jiaoge couldn't believe how easily she got nervous. She thought to herself that a man like Lu Jiaoge was impossible to figure out. She knew she needed to be more careful with her feelings around him. Meanwhile, the Mohist sect's Mount Darren, a woman sat alone, lost in thought. She sighed, wondering what her friends and family were doing. Her mind immediately immediately went to a man she cared about. She imagined him with another woman and got furious, vowing to beat them both up if they crossed a line. She snapped back to reality, remembering he was at an important meeting to distribute resources. She told herself to focus, but she couldn't help but wonder how it was going. She was still fuming about the thought of ever having a sister-in-law. At the same time, her young disciple, Q, was practicing nearby and asked if she was doing the energy exercise correctly. The master simply told her to do it again. The little disciple whined, calling herself a genius and asking if she could finally take a break, complaining that running her energy was tiring. Her master just flicked her on the head and ordered her to do as she was told. The little girl pouted, thinking it was unfair. She knew her master was the one who'd been distracted, but she was the one getting punished. She watched her disciple practice, impressed. She thought to herself how smart the girl was to have mastered the technique in just a few days. The little disciple finally finished, letting out of relief. The master clapped, telling her student she did a good job. The little girl's face lit up. She asked if this meant she could finally leave the mountain with her master, just like she'd seen others do. The master was still lost in her thoughts, getting angry at the idea of other women following the man she was thinking about. But then she realized something. She was the one who wasn't paying attention, not her disciple. She turned to her student and told her plainly that under normal circumstances, she wasn't allowed to leave the mountain. Kiao was confused. She immediately asked why not. The master smiled and explained that it was because Ku was her last disciple. But that answer didn't help the little girl at all. She still didn't get it. The master just shrugged and gave a ridiculous answer, saying she couldn't leave because there was no way out. She told Q to stop trying to deny her situation and just focus on getting stronger. After a moment, she sighed, thinking to herself that maybe she was being a little too hard on the kid. Suddenly, the little disciple got a mischievous look on her face. She told her master she finally understood the lesson. It was a strategy called lying low. The master just stared after her, completely confused. Her expression changed instantly. She realized that phrase must have come from someone else. She demanded to know what else he had told her. Chu explained that she was taught that staying low-key is fine, but sometimes you have to let the world know you exist. Her master looked completely stunned, asking what she meant. The little girl began to recite a powerful phrase about an awakened dragon roaring with dominating power. As she spoke, the image of a massive golden dragon filled the sky. Suddenly, a huge shadow fell over her. She turned around and called out for her master, not understanding what was happening. Her master suddenly grabbed her in a desperate hug, with tears streaming down her face. She begged Q to just stay with her for the rest of her life, leaving the little girl totally confused. The master suddenly looked up. She saw a streak of light cutting through the sky and wondered if they were back. A figure stood on a massive golden sword, flying high above. The master recognized the person as someone from the Sword Alliance. The Sword Alliance is a huge organization, famous for its focus on swordsmanship. They have a strict ranking system. Outer disciples use copper swords, while inner disciples carry silver ones. But the highest rank is the authorized disciple, and they wield powerful golden swords. The master realized the man was an authorized disciple, which meant he had a very high status. She could tell he was at the top of the second stage of power, but not quite at the third. She figured she could probably deal with him. She decided to test his strength by pretending her own power was at the lowest level of the second stage. The man just stood there on his sword, not moving. The master watched him, wondering why he hadn't come inside yet. Suddenly, the man stomped his foot on the golden sword. Then he just turned and flew away, leaving a streak of light behind him. The man on the golden sword made it ring out. The master watched him, annoyed. She figured he was trying to signal that she should come out and welcome him. The master thought his attempt to look cool just made him seem like a joke. Her little disciple agreed completely, saying she wanted to go punch him. The master laughed, happy they were on the same page. Still, she decided they couldn't be rude to the Sword Alliance and should go greet him. She took a moment to get ready before heading out. But just as she was about to go, something stopped her. She realized she might not have to deal with him after all. Turns out, the man was getting really impatient. He complained that he'd been waiting for almost an hour with no welcome. He announced that he was Chen Xiao, an authorized disciple, and a huge fan of someone named Yang. He got even angrier, shouting about how rude they were being. He couldn't believe they were giving him the cold shoulder. Then, his expression completely changed. He saw a beautiful woman, and his face lit up. It was clear who he was really here to see. He was completely taken by her beauty. He couldn't believe someone so innocent and beautiful even existed. But then, another man appeared. He had long black hair and a serious look. Chen Xiao noticed their clothes and realized they were from the Mo sect. He smiled to himself, thinking this trip was definitely worth it. The newcomer stood there, bathed in sunlight. He let out a long, as if he was carrying the weight of the world. The little disciple was completely stunned. She had never seen anyone look so cool in her entire life. Chen Xiao watched the whole thing. He realized it was all about the pose and decided he'd try it himself next time. He saw the master looking in his direction and figured she was looking at him, so he decided to make his move. But as Chen Xiao moved forward, the man from the Mo sect stepped right in his way, blocking him. Chen Xiao stopped and introduced himself, saying he was a famous author and a high-ranking disciple. Chen Xiao was sure they'd be impressed. He thought his fame and power would make them look up to him. Instead, Lu Chaogate walked right past him without a second glance. He just stood there, frozen. They didn't just walk by. They flew right past him like he wasn't even there. there. He was furious. This was unacceptable. Just then, the master landed in front of Lu Chaog, blocking his path. She demanded to know who he was, but he just casually waved his hand. A bright light shot out, forcing the master to cover her face. Chen Xiao watched from a distance, completely confused about what was going on. The woman announced that she was Chief Lu, the head of the spirit-lit image sect. Lu Chaog just watched her with a calm, knowing smile. Chen Xiao couldn't believe it. He was from the Sword Alliance, and this guy from some tiny sect was acting this arrogant? He was clearly looking down on him. He was fuming. As much as he admired the guy's style, he couldn't let this disrespect slide. He decided it was time to remind him who he was dealing with. Chen Xiao stepped up, telling Lu Chaoge that the Sword Alliance had sent him and that his behavior was rude. He called him Chief Lu. Lu Chaoge slowly turned. His eyes narrowed. He asked him to repeat what he just called him. Chen Xiao repeated that he had called him Chief Lu, but Lu Chaoge just looked down on him, completely unimpressed, and asked who he thought he was. He puffed out his chest and yelled that he was an authorized disciple of the Sword Alliance, expecting that to settle things. Lu Chaoge just scoffed, saying he was still just a disciple. He then asked if a student was really trying to teach him how to behave. Chen Xiao was speechless. He thought the guy had to be a fool. In his mind, Chen Xiao was a future icon of the Sword Alliance, someone who deserved respect. He couldn't believe this guy wasn't trying to get on his good side. Chief Lu could tell Lu Chaoge was about to say something crazy again. At the same time, Chen Xiao decided he'd had enough talk. He was going to find out just how strong this guy really was. He focused his energy, using a skill called soul prying to read his opponent's true strength. But Lu Chaoge knew exactly what he was doing. He just smiled, almost inviting him to try. The inspection told Chen Xiao that Lu Chaoge was only at the 5th realm, first stage. He smirked, thinking he finally had him figured out. But Lu Chao just looked at him and calmly asked something Lu Chao just told him to turn around. Chen Xiao was completely confused. Suddenly, Lu Chaoji's power exploded, revealing he was at the 6th realm. Chen Xiao's jaw dropped in disbelief. But it didn't stop there. His energy kept climbing until it hit the 7th realm, first stage. Lu Chaoge looked over at him, perfectly calm. He asked if Chen Xiao had gotten a good look this time. Chen Xiao was horrified. He realized Lu Chaoge had been hiding his real strength the entire time, and his soul-prying skill couldn't see through him at all.